It's official. Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States. And in this video, I'm going to tell you what I believe you need to do to plan to keep your freedoms and your finances intact. Now, this is not a conspiracy video. We're not going to talk about what happens if China invades the United States or some of the other greater theories that have been out there. But I'm going to talk about a sane roadmap for how to live in a country that is increasingly moving towards progressivism, towards what some people might call socialism, a world of higher taxes, less individualism. How do you prepare for that? And what I've done for years now is initially both left the United States and ultimately divorced myself from the United States entirely. You may not need to do one or both or either of those things, but I want to talk about some things that you should do, because we're hearing a lot of news about who will be in Joe Biden's cabinet. Will Bernie Sanders be the Labor Secretary? Will Elizabeth Warren be in charge of the Treasury? There are a lot of progressive voices who have what many consider, including us here at Nomad Capitalist, to have very extreme plans to do things like implement wealth taxes, certainly raise taxes on income, potentially nearly double taxes on capital gains, take the cap off the Social Security tax so that no matter how much money you earn, you're going to pay endless amounts into Social Security and Medicare and get the same back in return, basically turning it into a full-fledged welfare program and not just a pyramid scheme. So how do you prepare for this? Now, if you're concerned about things like your guns, there certainly are countries like in Central America where you can move and you can keep your gun rights. That's a difficult one. If you are a proponent of the Second Amendment, there aren't very many countries at all that are nearly as pro-gun as the United States. But if you can look past that issue and you just want to protect your personal freedom, your right to go about your business, your right to have a business and to make money and to keep the fruits of your labor, then let's talk about that. So I think the first thing that everyone needs to do is to have a plan B. And the first thing that I would look at in a Joe Biden administration is, if I have a retirement account, potentially looking at moving that offshore for a couple reasons. Number one is I think that certainly there will be some sort of turmoil in the stock market as a result of the pandemic and as a result of the elections. It will be very interesting to see what's going to happen. And I think what you want to do, regardless of who won, is have a diverse pool of investments. And so if you're invested in U.S. stocks or U.S. CDs in the bank, even if you have gold in your IRA, moving that offshore legally, generally you would need a six-figure amount, in my opinion, to justify that. But being able to access investments in other countries, buy real estate in other countries, invest in REITs and buy gold and stocks and hold bank accounts in other countries legally using your IRA funds, to me is something very important. Because one thing I've talked about, which some might view as conspiratorial, is a possibility that when the government gets really desperate, they will either dip into private retirement funds or decide, we're going to force you to buy a certain type of investment. We're going to force you to buy government debt with your retirement. And I think moving that offshore is a level of diversification. It's a level of asset protection. It's also a way that you can invest in different markets and get some diversification without having to actually have any cash on hand yourself. You can use those built-up retirement funds without taking any penalties. You simply liquidate in the U.S. and then move those retirement funds overseas through an offshore IRA. That's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do is look at how to legally have bank accounts in other countries, because one thing we've seen in the U.S. in general, no matter how much is in power, but I think you're going to see more of, is people who have businesses being attacked, people who deal in cash being attacked. There is a great trajectory against wealth right now in the United States, and I believe that having some money overseas is going to be very important. So you can start in countries like Georgia, Ecuador, Armenia, Cambodia, small amounts of money, Serbia, and you can open a bank account, whether remotely or generally by going there. If you work with our team, we have lawyers who in some cases can do those with power of attorney. You can open those pretty easily. You can also look at higher dollar accounts, 6- and 7-figure accounts in countries like Singapore, Switzerland. Most Swiss banks aren't open to Americans. We have one or two that are. There are banks in the European Union, banks in Panama, and banks all around the world where you can open a bank account and you can move some money overseas. And that way, just as the state of California once mistakenly took some money out of my business bank account when they thought I owed taxes that I had already paid, the next time there's a mistake or the next time someone actually wants to come after you, whether it's the government trying to take your money or whether it's someone in the civil world, you will have some kind of ability to actually protect yourself. Now, what we're not saying is don't pay your taxes. We're not saying hide your money, because if you're an American, you have to report your foreign bank accounts. And so I suggest that you do that. I suggest if you're going to live in the U.S., you pay your taxes. Now, I think that the third thing you should look at is starting to set up your base overseas. Where could you potentially go and live if times get tough? If you believe that things are going to get worse under a President Joe Biden, or if you're like me and just believe that no matter who wins, you're going to see a continually fractured country with people at each other's throats, and you just, no matter who's in charge, want to have a place to get away, then I would start exploring places where you can feel comfortable. I talked a while ago about why, while most Americans claim that they're going to go to Canada if their person loses the election, that's actually a big mistake. Canada doesn't want you. Mexico could want you. Many Central American and South American countries could want you. And if you have an income, the Americas, Central and South America, are some of the easiest countries to go and move to simply by showing I have an income. Some European countries like France as well have freelancer visas. Southeast Asian countries generally require you to invest in their country. They're more concerned about your wealth. Can you put money in our banks? Can you buy property? But there are dozens of countries all around the world where you can get a residence permit. You can even buy citizenship. And so I think a period of exploration could be a good thing. Now, unfortunately, you have a pandemic happening right now and you can't go to a lot of countries. But there are some countries that are open, including some you probably haven't thought about. Serbia, Belarus, Albania, Mexico has been open. Cambodia is open with a quarantine. Most people aren't thinking about those countries, but I believe some of these countries could be the future, or at least good lifestyle places to go and live. Most people aren't going to go and live in Belarus, but here's what I would suggest when you explore. At least go and see what it's like and see how, it's not really that much different. And what you see about these places on the news often isn't true, because those people in those countries are watching news about the United States and saying, wow, those people are getting beaten up by the police every day. Those people are being, taken advantage of every day. They think the same things about you. And so I think that getting out and exploring and finding that you can go and live somewhere else is the first step to having an escape plan. Then set up a second residence, or given what we've seen this year, hopefully multiple second residences. Let's say you go down to a place like Mexico or Ecuador or Panama. You put a couple of dollars in the bank, you get a residence permit there. Perhaps you go to Europe and you invest in a property or invest in bonds and you get a residence there. Perhaps you go to Asia and set up a residence permit. And now you've got a couple places where you can go. And the more time you spend in those places, the more time you'll be comfortable that you could leave and go to those countries. But really, for me, the fourth and most important thing that anyone with wealth should be doing in a Joe Biden presidency is having a second citizenship. Now, you can get that by having a second residence, and just like any other country, you can naturalize after a period of years, whether it's 2, 3, 5, 7, 10, 20, 30. You can choose countries that have faster naturalization timelines and that are more likely to naturalize citizens. But what I also suggest is if you have wealth, here's what we do know in a Joe Biden presidency is taxes are going to go up. Income taxes are going to go up, particularly on high earners. The biggest taxes in the actual income tax is that they want to take the cap off Social Security. So if you make over $400,000 and you're self-employed, you're going to pay more than 15% extra on your income. The tax code is going to become more complicated. And here's the thing, you can't run from that. You can't run and hide, because the U.S. is essentially the only country. There are a few joining it in some degree, but it's essentially the only country that has full citizenship-based taxation. If you're a stock trader or a cryptocurrency investor and you move overseas, you're still liable to U.S. tax. If you have a business that you can move overseas, you can reduce your U.S. tax, but Joe Biden wants to increase the tax that you pay on your offshore business, even if you don't spend a single day in the United States. I believe having a second passport is a good first step towards either having two masters and being able to go and live in another country and live by other rules in a place that's more free while still being a U.S. taxpayer, or potentially even expatriating from the United States for good. What is going to happen, in my opinion, the worst thing for Nomad Capitalists will be rising taxes on high earners, people who, in my experience, have worked very hard and have innovated a lot to create great businesses, that now they want to come and raise your taxes potentially by double digits. They want to take hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even millions of dollars extra from you every year, and they're still going to continue to demonize you. The culture is going to be against wealthy people. Their rhetoric is going to be against people who create things. They're not going to go after Beyonce or the football star. They're going to go after you, the business owner. They're going to come and take your wealth. And I believe that having all these steps in place are good diversification tools no matter what happens. But if you're wealthy, we now have validation that this is the direction that the country is going. I believe that the ultimate step is having a second citizenship, because there comes a time when America is just an idea. It does not have to be a place. And those ideas are being born in other countries, like some of the ones we've talked about. The United States this year, even under Trump, didn't make a difference, but even under Trump, number 17th in the world in economic freedom, beaten by countries like Georgia and Lithuania, former parts of the USSR. Those countries are beating you. They've done America better in terms of economic freedom than the United States has. And so you can go to other places and get the things that you're looking for, whether it's greater personal freedoms, whether it's more apt social life, the people that you want, whether it's just peace and freedom, which is something that I've found is just the peace of being away from all the chaos, whether it's a better passport, better travel options, which have been squashed during this pandemic. I believe that having a second passport is the ultimate thing to do, not only to give you the freedom to leave, because who knows when they just decide to say, you can't leave. They've made it difficult to renounce citizenship this year because of the pandemic. Just see how many more excuses they can come up with. So those are the things that I would be doing. I'd be moving my retirement account offshore potentially. I'd be looking at legally having banking or potentially investments overseas. I would be setting up some kind of residence in a place where I feel comfortable and exploring and getting physically comfortable with that, getting mentally and emotional comfort with the idea of potentially leaving the country. And I'd have a second citizenship that I could do that, and I could even divorce my country if I had to, if it came down to personal freedom or saving hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. That might be something that you want to protect yourself against as well, because freedoms will go down, taxes will go up. It's going to be very interesting. Listen, again, I think no matter who wins, in the future, this is the direction the country is going, and it's now been validated. You can join me overseas where relative peace, relative freedom, financial freedom, or you can stay and say, hey, I'll wait until things get bad enough. People were claiming that a Biden win would be the end of the world, and that if Kamala Harris takes over, that would be even more the end of the world. Well, it's here. And so now is the time to ask yourself, have things gotten bad enough yet that you need to do something a little bit different? How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.